Welcome to this week's business building session. I'm Mike O'Neill with Bench Builders, and I'm going to be your host again this week for today's Q&A session. Joining us today as expert panelist is Steve Hillis with Empower Partners. Steve, welcome.
Thank you. Good to be with you.
We're glad you're with us. We're going to let you introduce yourself here in just a moment, but I also wanted to introduce Rhonda. Rhonda Beard is again joining us. Rhonda is going to be providing some important employer-related updates. Welcome back, Rhonda. I may have lost Rhonda's audio, so we're going to keep on going. But just to remind the folks who are new to this, we launched this Q&A series to kind of bring together experts like Steve to kind of help you as business owners, as key leaders, as HR professionals, stay on top of what is most important in order for you to build your business. Just to kind of remind you, we are wanting to hear from you. This is a Q&A session, so if you haven't already, open up the chat box, and that's how we will hear your questions. Also be reminded that everybody who has registered will be getting an email, and that email will have links to include not only this recording, it also will include the slide deck, and we may even slip in a few other things just to make that something that if you go and open it up, it will give you a chance to replay what we have done, and it gives you a little bit of an update of what our next session is all about. With that being said, I'd like to go back to, and I hope I won't do this without messing things up here. I'm going to share my screen and go to this, and I'm hoping you're all seeing something that says quick notes. Does that look correct to you, Steve?
Yes.
And Rhonda, do we have you back?
I'm back.
All right, well, good. The topic that we've asked Steve to speak to, we think cannot be any more important. With the economy doing what it is, with sales in somewhat disarray, we've asked Steve to kind of speak to your goal as a business owner, as a leader, even as an HR professional, is to support the organization as you go out and generate revenue for your business. You're hopefully trying to grow your sales revenue. So we've asked Steve, a sales executive who has managed large sales teams, to kind of give us his thoughts to how do you go about doing that. So I'm going to stop sharing, Steve. I'm going to let you take the control and tell me when you've got that.
Okay, we're set.
Okay, you're set, good to go. Steve, rather than me introduce you and Empower Partners, would you do me a favor? Can you share with the folks who are with us today or who will be listening to the recording later, tell us a little bit about Steve Hillis and Empower Partners, please.
Sure, be glad to. And thanks again for having me on your webinar this morning. I guess the quick background would be 35 years experience in sales and marketing in the flooring industry. And so grew up around Dalton, Georgia, been in that industry most of my career, and retired from floor covering sales and marketing about 7 years ago, and then created Empower Partners, where we work with primarily building products companies, but we have expanded some out of that. And we provide training, one-on-one coaching and consulting to companies to really enhance their profits. Our primary focus is on business strategy, training their sales leaders and their salespeople to be more effective is, I guess, kind of our core business.
All right, that's very helpful. Steve, if you were to generalize your clients that you work with, how has COVID impacted them from a sales standpoint?
In various ways. You know, we're fortunate with our customer base. Over 90% of our customers are in the flooring industry, and about 70% of that group of customers are flooring dealers that buy and resell and install flooring. And the construction industry in most states has been considered an essential business and have been, so that industry has continued to work, but it certainly has changed. It's changed in many ways, and it varies from company to company, but learning to be effective working from home has been a big challenge, and we'll cover some of that today. And I think just being sensitive to the end use customer, the ultimate customer, whether it be retail or commercial customers, on what their perceptions are, what their fears are around COVID-19 and this whole environment that we're in. And so it causes us to have to rethink our strategies. It may, some companies have had to pivot and redefine the markets that they go after. We've had some customers that focused a lot in the hospitality market, for example, which is hotels primarily, and that business has been impacted probably more than any of the commercial markets. So depending on what market they service, some people have been impacted severely. We have quite a few customers actually that are growing their business and thriving during this environment, but they have had to make changes in how they sell and how they service their customers.
We actually kind of characterize the time you're going to be spending with us, and that is not necessarily surviving, but trying to have the mindset of actually kind of thriving. You've taken the time to kind of prepare some notes, and so let's let you kind of get into that. And if you don't mind, as you go through this, I'm sure there's going to be some questions that are going to come up, and invite just those who are with us. If you've got questions for Steve as he's presenting, put those in the chat box. I'll be monitoring those, and we'll try to feed those to you, Steve, as you go along.
Good. And what we've done with this presentation, Mike, is to kind of boil it down to 9 key areas that we think companies need to evaluate and develop during this time. One is the sales culture. It's a good time to really evaluate what is the quality of our sales team. We recommend doing employee assessments to really understand their skill, their will, which means their work ethic, and their attitude. As we go through this, a lot of people are stuck in fear over this catching the COVID virus, and some salespeople are reluctant to get out and sell. So working with our team to really understand, do we have the right people on the field? And this is a time that they may need to make changes, whether it be cutbacks or layoffs or recruiting better talent. So we'll get into that a little bit later, but really evaluating your sales culture and finding ways to improve that, we think is a good time to do that. Looking at your sales force effectiveness, we encourage companies to evaluate the profitability and productivity. And because a lot of people are working from home, because they have challenged situations with calling on their customers, really understanding how productive people are is more important than ever. And so we encourage companies to spend some time developing metrics, developing systems that allow managers to understand and evaluate the productivity as well as the profitability of the salesperson going through this time. Looking at their sales history, their closing ratios. We use an acronym, PDAs, to mean priority daily activities. And we encourage companies to define that for each salesperson to make sure at least the top 5 things, the most important things that they need to do every day, that they're doing it, and that should be measured weekly. So we're seeing some new metrics develop, some new measurement systems that companies use. And if it's done in a motivational way with your salespeople, it can be very effective. The other is think about the quality of your customer base. I mentioned this a little bit earlier. I've got a good client of ours now that had about 80% of their business in the senior living market.
Mm.
Well, their business, as you can imagine, has been impacted because their customers, they can't allow them in their facilities. So they're having to rethink what type of customers that they're developing. And it's also something that, just to share with your audience, that we believe that going through this COVID-19 season is a very important time to build stronger relationships. And so that's another element for a lot of people that changes how they sell. The first thing that they need to do is to show empathy. They need to connect with their customer. And you may have one client that the owner of the business is aggressive and moving forward, and they've set up the proper safety and health considerations for their team, and they're going about business in a very proactive way. We've got other customers and end users that are very fearful, and they don't want people in their showrooms. And so you have to be able to really listen and understand and show empathy to your customers to develop a stronger customer base and better relationships. So evaluating that is important. We think looking at your sales bench, what is important for companies, what percentage of your sales is managed by senior management or leadership. This gets into maybe some longer term planning. If a company is planning to sell their business, which these days many companies are in the next 5 years planning to exit and sell their business. So to achieve the best valuation, companies need to be looking now at how do we spread out the customer relationships and how do we build a stronger sales team so that when we do get ready to sell in 2 years or 5 years or maybe 10 years, we don't have a majority of our sales dependent on the owner of the company. So that could be a good reason for them to do recruiting and building a stronger sales bench.
Steve, would you mind if I interject just for a moment?
Sure. Yeah.
Let's see if what I'm hearing is what you want us to hear, and that is you're saying that COVID is presenting us with an opportunity. You're telling your clients this is the best time to step back and really evaluate. And what we've heard you kind of say is it kind of starts with just the overall sales culture. And that is, what is the overall quality of the sales team? And then you suggest that you have to also look at that at an individual level, but don't stop there. Look at your customers, look at your customer mix, look at the profitability in which it all kind of comes about, because you may comment about the sales bench. Name of our business is Bench Builders. We recognize you're only as strong as your bench. We've got a question that's already come in. Can I just throw this out to you?
Sure.
It comes from Dan Bundy. Dan is in the Birmingham area. I won't read it verbatim, but he's going to ask you to take a moment and discuss the challenges of identifying a poor performing salesperson and a good salesperson who can't really perform in this type of current environment. It may be that their skill set is much more suited for face-to-face, and a good salesperson who can't really do that could be hampered. The reality of COVID is how people sell probably has been impacted. How do you take that in consideration when you're evaluating the strength of individuals and looking at bench strength with COVID?
Okay, good. Yeah, and thanks, Dan, for that question. It's a great question, and actually a great segue into this next bullet point on the game has changed, have you? We actually just did a video that was just posting, I think, today on LinkedIn about this whole subject. We believe that that now is the time. Now is an opportunity for salespeople to rise to the next level. We say that, and we do some training around this by putting people in two categories. There's people that find excuses, and there's people that find a way to achieve their goals. And so when you talk about comparing poor performers to good performers, and then how you have them do the right things during this COVID experience to get better, and the face-to-face part of it has certainly changed a lot. I would say that, going back to one of the earlier points, is first, be sensitive to your customers and show empathy. You may have some customers that are okay with face-to-face meetings, and obviously you can continue business as usual and have a lunch meeting with them and keep building your business. You've got others that are hesitant to do that, and they may prefer, doing a Zoom call product presentation if you're doing a new product launch. So we think that how that all plays out is that top producers will be open to changing the way they go about selling. We did some surveys recently that showed the average salesperson, this is across all industries, but the average salesperson is making 3 to 4 effective sales calls per day. This is prior to COVID-19. We believe, and we're already working with companies now and training and coaching their salespeople on this, and we're seeing results already. We believe strongly that the opportunity is there to double that. In other words, to double your sales productivity. And we think it's a combination of using technology more today than you ever have before. Your customers are open to doing Zoom calls like we're doing now. They're open to presentations and using technology. So doing more of that allows you to connect with customers, a larger number of customers during the day, instead of getting on a plane or driving 2 hours to get to a customer to check on samples or to do a product demo. There's many of those that can be done using technology, right? That allows you to do more. And we believe the part of face-to-face selling should be more strategic. So look at doing better planning, getting better appointments set, climbing the ladder within an organization. Don't just do your routes, your milk route sales trip and stop in on people to check samples and to touch base like we've done in the past. But be strategic and make sure when you do travel and you do get in the car or on the plane, you've got more strategic meetings set, and that you're taking advantage of building those relationships. So anyway, that's another whole 30-minute conversation around how you do that. But I hope that helps answer your questions. I think you'll find salespeople that probably have been your top producers in the past are the ones that are open to new ideas. They're open to change, and the opportunity now is for them to certainly do that by being more effective with their relationship building and with their sales calls. We think the average should be 8 to 10 effective sales calls a day instead of 3 to 4.
So I know that you work primarily in an industry, and you're quoting numbers that probably fit best for that industry. Can I come back to the second part of Dan Bundy's question? And I think you've already answered it, what you said. We've had expert panelists come on. We had Mike Lieberman, who is a marketing expert, Kevin Barber, who is also a marketing expert. And what we've heard them say is that COVID has forever changed sales and marketing as we know it. Do you agree with them?
I do. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so you would agree with them. And so we're acknowledging sales as we know it has changed. Harvey asked the question, and that is, in this new environment, if you could slip into your responses, ideas of reaching out in this new environment. And I'm going to invite the folks who are on with us. On on the chat box, there's a little blue drop down. If you would, make sure that you have clicked the all panelists and attendees. That way everybody can see the question, not just the panelists. So if you will do that, that would be very, very helpful. Thank you very much. Sorry for interruption. Steve, please continue.
Okay. Yeah, and good question, Harvey, on reaching out in this new environment. You know, and the next point there, I think, speaks to that as well. I've touched on it a little bit already. Is as you do reach out in this environment. I know I've said this, I think, twice already, and I think it's worth saying the third time. Show empathy. And I want to pause there to say, you know, that sounds easy, but it's not. For some salespeople, that's very difficult. It changes their approach. It changes their the speed that they try to go through the sales process. And so there's some training and reinforcement, I think, that needs to be done there with most salespeople on how you reach out. Because if they've been selling for 15 or 20 years, they're used to prospecting a certain way, setting up the meeting, going in, doing their demo, closing the business, and moving on. So I can't emphasize that enough, is show empathy, and you've got to be able to pivot or change your approach with different customers during the day. And if your goal is really building stronger relationships, and I think you should communicate that to your customers and showing them that you really care. I love that acronym, CARE, which stands for Customers Are Really Everything. This is a time, we're in a season that you can build stronger relationships. You know, people buy from people they like and trust. That's much more important than your product benefits, your price, and your delivery. And if salespeople can understand that and show empathy during this time and build relationships first, they're going to see that more profitable business and negotiated business comes as a result of that.
So can we drill down on that in just a moment? You're saying regardless, show empathy towards customers, demonstrate care. Greg writes, it's kind of a question, but I think he writes, we're looking to grow, this is Greg Love writing, we're looking to grow our relationships inside our existing customers. So they are seeing these are relationships that are already established, but how could they expand maybe business opportunities within current customers, perhaps putting emphasis on expansion over going out and cultivate new ones. Are you seeing that in other settings?
Yes, absolutely. And I love that question, Greg. The thing I would share with you is that this is an opportunity, again, a season that allows the salesperson maybe a unique opportunity in many cases to, we call it climb the ladder. If they're used to selling to, say, a sales manager of a company, but they haven't been able to get to the senior VP of sales or haven't been able to get to the CEO of the company. One of the reasons that it's so challenging for a salesperson to accomplish that is because business is strong and people are so busy. So to get the time of a CEO is very difficult, because now the CEO may be working from home. You may be able to send a LinkedIn message and connect and get a Zoom call and then set up coffee at their favorite restaurant tomorrow. People have time now. So smart salespeople are taking existing customers, going deeper with them by climbing that ladder and getting up the decision tree to key decision makers, which is the best way to expand your business within an existing customer. And we're coaching people on that every day and seeing a lot of people have success there.
All right, thank you.
All right. Then the other thing is look at the strength of your value proposition. I think this is a very important time for companies to evaluate what makes us different from our competition, and is that important to our customers today? So you may need to pivot or change some of what you do, some of the services you provide, but see that you've really spent some time on on developing your value proposition and making sure your people understand that and they can communicate it. Salesforce discipline and accountability. I believe that to really move the needle in your business, if you can bring motivational accountability, and you see I plugged in a word there, motivational accountability, and discipline. Those are two words that, you know, the general average salesperson will run from. They don't like the word accountability. They may not like discipline, but there's a way when it's done correctly from their manager and from the ownership to set metrics that really do improve their daily activity and their sales performance, and don't just create a new CRM system and send them a memo, but really spend time on this. I've found that it can then have the salespeople be self-motivated to accomplish more. And then the other part where I think is a good time to evaluate your company is what's the quality of our marketing and sales support. Mike, you mentioned this earlier with some of your previous panel experts. Marketing and sales has changed. And what are we doing with our sales support team? You know, the people that are placing the orders and dealing with claims and following up with customers and working with the sales team to make this all come together. So look at your sales tools, look at your website, your social media, connecting with customers in an effective way, through LinkedIn and other social media formats is, I think, more important than ever. So I think that's bringing us right in on 30 minutes, Mike. I don't know if, as a wrap up, I might just say, encourage everyone to invest time in determining these factors with your sales team. I would spend time interviewing each salesperson to understand the real quality of your sales culture and your customer base. You've got to spend time with them to really understand that. And then check out your customer references and testimonials. I think if you really want to know your true reputation of your company, and that's a question I've many times asked when we start working with a client, is how many customer testimonials do we have that your salespeople can go out and use? Many times I find they don't have any, or they might have just a few posted to their website. This is a time, again, to build relationships. And as you're building stronger relationships and doing a good job, a customer testimonial goes a long way in helping you move the needle and grow your business.
I'd like to come back to the customer testimonial in just a moment, but Harvey Fest, who's on the line with us right now, asked a question. In your opinion, if you were to compare Zoom and Microsoft Teams from a sales capacity, do you tend to recommend one or the other?
Well, good question, Harvey. I believe that it depends on your audience and what you're trying to accomplish. I've seen there's times where we're doing Zoom is easy to navigate. It shows, I think, presentations like this well, and it's easy for people to connect. If you're doing large team meetings and you're trying to have interaction amongst the teams, we've done this with some of our clients that have a project management team that works with a sales team, and they also have an estimating team, and they need to be able to share ideas, and they're not in an office environment now where they can do that. Using the the team type of platform allows better interaction. So I think it really depends on what you're trying to accomplish.
That's fair. Back to getting customer testimonials. We know the value of testimonials when you go onto a website, but how would you suggest approaching customers and asking for those testimonials?
Let's see if I can boil that down. We have a whole 45-minute coaching session on how to do that. Let me give you just the quick bullet points. You first have to follow up and ask for the testimonial, right? The reference after you've done a good job. That's where most salespeople stop. And because of that, about 70, it's over 70%, we found with our clients, over 70% of the time, customers say they will do it, and then they don't. And so we've developed a system for how you follow that up that's not pushy, that's not overbearing, but is effective in helping the customer do that. And the short version is you, after they say, yes, I'll do the customer testimonial, then the next week, it's a 4-week process. The next week, you follow up with a phone call, thanking them for agreeing to do the testimonial, and mainly just that, and ask them to email it to you. Then the following week, you send an email. So you alternate from phone call to email. The second week, you send an email, again, thanking them for agreeing to do the testimonial, and then giving them another piece of information. It might be that you want to use this to add to your customer testimonials on your website, and you want to make sure that's okay for them. But another piece of information, and it's a reminder, a gentle reminder. And then the third week, if they still haven't done it, then you go back to a phone call or a voicemail, and again, thank them for doing it. Ask if they received your email, and then at that point, you start to try to put a deadline in, and you say, you know, that in the next 2 weeks or by next Friday, you give them some kind of deadline that you would like to get that letter in, and you're going to submit that to your marketing department or whatever it might be. And then the fourth week, if they still haven't done it, then you send another email, or a personal visit if you can, is even better. Take them to lunch, and at that, tell them, recognize that they're busy, and that this is probably a low priority for them, but again, you appreciate their business and them agreeing to do the testimonials. Now you offer to write the letter for them, or send a draft of some things, since you're familiar with the project, and you could draft it up if they would then refine it and send it to you. And it's amazing how many customers will go to that fourth week, and then usually their response will be, you know, Mike, I really appreciate you doing that. Yes, that would be great, because I have been so busy. I just haven't had time, but I love what the job that you did, and I will give your company a testimonial. Then you craft your own letter, or at least the bullet points. You send it to them, and you've got a very high probability that they'll put that on their letterhead, make a few changes, sign it, and send it to you.
So Steve, he can attest to this, but for those who are online with us right now, none of the questions that I've asked Steve were pre-scripted. So I just asked you a question, and you gave a very complete and helpful response to how do you get those testimonials. You probably didn't get a chance to see this, but we work closely with our friends at Sparkative, and Sparkative has advised us on how to go about doing that. But Christina from Sparkative writes, you can also use software like Boast to help you simplify the technical process of collecting the actual testimonial. I don't know if you know about Boast or not, but she goes on to write, especially video testimonials. So you mentioned the written testimonials and how important they are. In today's environment, it could be argued that videos are even more critical, but it's a tool that could be used to secure video testimonials and getting the sign-off permissions and the things you got to do to be able to use those. Are you familiar with Boast, Steve?
Yes, and I think that's a great recommendation as well. Yeah, video testimonials can be very powerful today and used in many ways. Yeah.
Excellent. Thank you, Christina. Steve, what I'm going to attempt to do is now transition to Rhonda, but before we do that, let me just kind of share with you quite a large percentage of the folks who have registered for today are, because I know a number of them are in senior sales leadership roles. And so you can see that in the nature of the questions. But as sales leaders, they're dealing with the same issue that Rhonda's going to be speaking to. So I want to try to do something. if I can get you to stop sharing your screen and I can take that back, we're going to attempt to do this and hopefully it will work.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Continue. And let's see how this looks here. Wow. Can you all see what the topic is right there on your all screen?
Yes.
Oh, fantastic. So now let me see if I can advance that. And so what I'd like to do, if you don't mind, I'm going to advance through some slides here. And I'd like to kind of move now to Rhonda. And to kind of cue this up, it is the end of July. And for many parents, they're fretting about school. Some schools have announced when they're going to start and how they're going to do it. Some still have not, and we know that's creating anxieties. So what I would like to do, Steve, I'd like to ask Rhonda to kind of speak to this, and as we have time at the end, I want to come back to you and Rhonda and ask some questions that might merge from both. So can you stick with us for the balance?
Yes, that's good.
Perfect. Rhonda, are you with us? I was a little fearful of that. I may have lost Rhonda on that. So I'm going to make a stab at this. I have not talked to Rhonda on this. We may have lost her. Let me see if I can find her on that.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you now. Yes, thank you.
Okay.
You're back.
All right.
And I'm breathing now because we got you back.
I've had some real connection problems this morning, so everybody fingers crossed this will stay on for the next several minutes so I can cover this information. But thanks, Mike. Hopefully it'll stay connected for a little bit. So as Mike said, we're hearing a lot of concerns from companies who have employees that have kids going back to school and they're not sure what they're going to do. And a lot of that stems from the fact that schools don't know what they're going to do yet or haven't announced it or are making changes. So a survey I recently saw said that working parents are now just as concerned about childcare or going back to school as they are COVID. So it's a big concern, and I'm sure a number of people on the call are working parents, and so you know exactly what we're talking about. But outside of that, as business owners and leaders, really need to be in tune with what's going on with your employees and the stress and anxieties that it's causing them to now have to worry about these things on top of potentially worrying about their jobs and COVID and the political environment and the economy and racial unrest. So there's so many things coming at people from so many different directions. Really have to make an extra effort to be understanding and empathetic with your employees and see how you can help them through it. So, from a perspective of schools, and I've talked to people in a number of different areas, and the schools are just all over the board. Some of them are opening full-time in person. Some are opening full-time virtual, some are a mix or a blend, some are giving parents choices, some are doing a phased-in approach, so virtual for a few weeks and then in person. So you probably have people working for you that have kids in different school districts, and so it's not even a one-size-fits-all for the employees that you have. They all have different scenarios with their children. And some schools haven't even made a decision yet on what's going to happen. And some have changed it. So it's just a lot of anxiety for parents right now, not knowing what's going to happen with the schools. And then on top of that, having the concern about their kids potentially being exposed when they go to school. What happens if my child gets exposed or gets COVID and then has to stay home or be quarantined? Or you may have employees who have spouses who are teachers, and teachers have a whole nother concern about their jobs and what's going to happen and exposure and infection. So there's so much going on around the schools reopening that we just wanted to offer some suggestions on what you as employers can do to potentially help your employees through that. So first of all, be flexible. Try to be as flexible as possible with your employees as they're working through it. If you have options for people to flex their schedule or telecommute, make sure and offer that and make sure people know that's available. Telecommuting isn't always going to be the answer though, because if your students are still at home, it's very difficult to work from home when you have kids at home trying to do schoolwork. And a lot of people experience that at the end of the last school year. But just trying to be flexible and finding out what their needs are, finding out, some people may be absolutely fine. They may have family members taking care of it. They may have others that they've already made arrangements with. But if you have people potentially who have 2 working parents and 2 or 3 kids in school, they don't have any family, they don't know what they're going to do, try to work with them and see what you can do to help them through the situation. If you're an employer that's subject to the CARES Act, the FFCRA, and there's the family leave that's available, the expanded family leave, and they have time available under that, make sure to make them aware of that. It was a really big thing when it came out. Over the summer, not so much. But now as schools are reopening, you may have people that need to take that family leave to arrange their time around schools, and maybe even encourage them to take some intermittent leave. So taking the expanded family leave, for those that are familiar with it, you don't have to take a whole week off or 2 weeks off. You can take hours off intermittently on days, and that may help people with some scheduling issues with school. Some other things I know I've heard different companies are doing, or even parents are getting together to take care of. My daughter, for instance, found out her children were supposed to start school on the 10th, be 100% in person, and then last week found out they've moved it to the 17th, and the first month is going to be all online. And they both work, and they have 3 kids. And so they've been able to find out through some other people that they work with that Sylvan Learning Center is opening up their centers to let students come in and do their schoolwork from there. And they're going to provide not necessarily teachers, but tutors and adults to supervise that process. So, check Sylvan Learning Centers, or make sure your employees know about that. It is a cost, but it's certainly a cost that many would be willing to pay to have that issue resolved and not have to worry about it. Some other parents are getting together and leasing space, or hiring retired school teachers to help teach their students. So there's a lot of alternatives, and some parents have already figured those things out. But these are some things you can at least offer to employees, or maybe even offer to get parents together at work, get them together just in a discussion group, and people can share what they're doing or share ideas, or maybe even get together. There's a new term called parent pods, where parents are getting together and figuring out amongst them how to take care of their children's school needs as a group. So they may alternate, taking on family member or other friends' kids. So you might have 3 or 4 parents that get together and say, I'll take all the kids on Monday if you take them on Tuesday, and whatever the case might be. So help your employees get together and offer those alternatives. The other thing you might do, if you're financially able to do it, is to offer your employees a stipend, maybe a short-term stipend, weekly or monthly, to help them with costs of potentially getting that schoolwork or childcare that they need so they can continue to work. And I also read an article about an employer that had a pretty large space after they scaled back some of their office space with so many people working from home. They had a space that they could use to bring students in and let them do their schoolwork there with their parents at work. And there's, that's a little bit difficult to maneuver, and you may also have some liability issues there. But try to get creative and just let employees know that you understand their concerns. You really want them to be able to continue to work, but having their kids in school and having that to be a successful education experience for their kids is going to be the most important thing to them right now. So figure out, how you can be flexible with your employees and be proactive, and ask people that are parents what they're going to do or how you can help them. Even develop some guidelines or develop some Q&As to help them think about what happens if the school schedule changes. I might get something worked out now for the next month, but then it changes. School shuts down again because there's been an exposure. Then what do you do? So try to encourage them and help them with not only plans to start as school opens, but what happens if that whole situation changes? What are your backup plans? What are some options that you have? Look at your policies, the sick leave that you provide, the time off that you provide to employees, and make sure that you're providing opportunities for them to take time if they need it to take care of their children's education. So most of all, again, just be flexible, offer them some ideas, resources. There certainly are resources within the community you can get in touch with United Way or school systems, your local governments, and see what type of resources might be there for your employees, so you can proactively share that with them and help them explore those options so that they have a little bit less stress level around getting their kids back in school. But I'd be interested in, if there's things you've done, you want to put these ideas in the chat box, if there's things that you've done for your employees or are planning to do, or concerns that you're hearing that we can discuss as a group, or other people might be able to answer as well. So feel free to put some comments or questions in the chat box and we'll answer anything we can. But most of all, again, flexibility and just letting employees know that you are concerned and you want to help them with resources and ideas on how to maneuver this in the next several weeks.
Rhonda, as I'm sitting here listening to you, you listed potential issue after potential issue after potential issue. And we like to be in a position to offer good, straightforward answers. But I think just raising these issues, you can see the complexity of what we're dealing with. I want to mention, before I forget it, we have been able to attract great panelists like Steve. One of the panelists we had here about a month ago was Dan Gilmore. Dan is an attorney. The name of his firm is Squire Strategies. And what he has done is he's taken all the advice that we're getting out of, like the CDC, like the Department of Labor, and he's kind of condensed that into employer updates. So if that type of thing would be helpful, we never would discourage you from going to those sites, but if you would like an excellent summary, check out Dan Squire Strategies. I got to say that right. And we're going to try to figure out somehow to make his updates available to the folks who register for our webinars. We're just so impressed with what they do. Hey, Steve, I want to come back to you. You were listening to Rhonda talk about all of those issues and school reopening. Are your clients, from a sales and sales leadership standpoint, are they dealing with the exact same issues?
Yes, absolutely. And that is a big challenge, of course, as we move into August on how they're going to be able to respond to the school situations. One thing that I would share with you, and I encourage business leaders to implement, is a monthly personal conference. We call it a PC meeting, where we say to business leaders in our leadership training, the most important meeting you have every month should be a one-on-one personal conference with each person that reports to you for 1 hour, typically. And you do not talk about business. You focus on their professional development, and you zone in on their personal goals and their business goals. And there's a whole training around how to do that. But we find that, and Mike, you may have some statistics on this, but some surveys that we've seen and many that we've adapted in our coaching is the number one reason people leave companies is because they feel like their boss did not really care about their personal development, their professional development. And so through these personal conferences, as you're talking with someone in a confidential setting and asking about the personal goals and their challenges and their business goals and challenges, it allows that employee and that business leader to have interaction on a regular basis to see that they are having challenges with how to deal with school and children at home and their work. They need flex hours. So many times people go about business and they won't go talk to their boss about it. So they become depressed or stressed over it. So it's inviting that open communication and having that on a regular monthly basis that I think helps the business leader be aware of what their challenges are so they can do some of these things that Rhonda has mentioned to provide support or flex time or things that they need.
And Steve, sorry, Mike, I would just reemphasize, as you said in the first bullet on the slide that's showing, is proactively communicate. So, a lot of companies will kind of take the stance of, well, if somebody needs something, I'll let them come to me.
Mhm.
Don't wait for them to come to you, because again, they may be intimidated by that. They may feel like, some people don't like to ask for help and they want to figure things out themselves, or feel like they need to figure it out themselves, or think that they might be viewed less, viewed differently if they come forward and say, hey, I'm having this problem, I don't know what to do. So go to them, make sure that employees know that you do care about their situation and what's happening with them, and that you want to help. So don't wait for people to come and ask. Be proactive. And even if it means putting out a communication to everybody at the same time saying, hey, we want to help working parents. Here's what we're going to be doing, or please come and talk to me or your supervisor before school starts so that we know and understand your situation and can help you. Whatever it is, just reach out to them and don't wait for them to ask for help, because they may not.
Yeah, that's great.
Steve, you made this observation, and it's perfectly aligned with what we try to recommend to our clients. Here's what's also nice. We have had a number of expert panelists come on stress the importance of one-on-one. If you don't spend one-on-one time with your employees, given how fast things are changing, that relationship can suffer. So a number of the folks on this call today are in sales leadership roles. You've stressed the importance for sales leaders to spend time one-on-one with their sales organization. Naturally, by extension, that applies to any manager on this call today. So that's extremely, very, very important. I would like to, if I could, just a moment, kind of point out that this is a series that came up as a direct result of COVID. And let me just kind of set up what we've got lined up for next week. We have been hearing from clients about, you talked about empathy. And empathy is sometimes something that people don't quite understand. But what we're also hearing is managers are being told about the importance of emotional intelligence. What is it? Why does it really matter? And so we've asked Quinn Farrell to be our panelist next week. And he's going to come to this explanation from a little bit different perspective. Quinn is an engineer by training. He's hardwired as an engineer. And when you begin, like when we're working with clients and we're working to try to help those individuals improve their soft skills, he has said, boy, that can be really hard. So we decided to go ahead and just pick that as a topic as our what we're going to be hearing from. Quinn is out of Chicago, and you're going to love, if you register for next week, you're really going to like Quinn. He's a personable guy, very informative. I think you're in for a treat. I would like to, if I could, just take a moment, and I want to come back and just kind of wrap up. But let me just remind everybody that when COVID hit, now a little over 4 months ago, we began these Q&A sessions to address the questions that you were raising. You were raising them during the Q&A session, and then we were hearing from you by phone calls, by emails, and what we've attempted to do is choose topics that would be relevant, that you can really act on now. The topics that we have covered thus far are far-ranging. We've covered the topic of how do you manage employees remotely. We've stressed the importance of communication, particularly communications in times like this. We're really almost in a kind of a crisis. We have heard from like Emily Elrod, and when she was stressing the importance of not just protecting your employees physically, but also psychologically. And as you have already heard Rhonda make reference to, we've placed a lot of emphasis on legal compliance. It's the whole alphabet soup. We've addressed the FSCRA, the Paycheck Protection Program, the CARES Act, ADA, HIPAA, just to name a few. But this landscape, it's changing very fast, and we've been able to only kind of touch the highlights of these important topics during the limited time that we're together. And so you probably know that Rhonda and I have an extensive background in HR, pretty much all aspects of HR, and we really enjoy helping HR and leaders with these kinds of issues. So if you have issues that you would like us to help you with, reach out. Let us hear from you, and we're going to do everything we can to try to help in doing so. I have up on the screen contact information. Steve, you have provided some phenomenally good information, and we know that you've tried to pack a lot of information into a little bit of time. So thank you for what you did, because you did it in a way that didn't seem to overwhelm us while we're watching and listening. So thank you for being with us and your willingness to kind of share your expertise. Rhonda, as always, it's good to have you on with us. It is a changing landscape. It's changing and changing fast. And so, Steve, on behalf of Rhonda and me and Bench Builders, thank you for being with us.
My pleasure. I'm glad to be here.
And Rhonda, we hope to have you back this time next week.
Thanks, Mike, and thanks everyone for joining again today. We enjoyed it.
So on behalf of Bench Builders, thanks for being with us. Thanks for giving us an hour of your time. We hope you have found this valuable, but we're honored that you would give us that time, and hope you can join us about this time next Thursday at 10 o'clock. Take care, everybody. Have a blessed day.